Welcome to the Ignite Podcast, where we introduce thought leaders and subject matter experts that you'll want to consider for your next corporate event. Now, here's your host, Dennis Warden.
Well, I want to welcome you to the Ignite Podcast. And this week we have the opportunity to have a guest on, Ron Vaimberg. And Ron is, well, I'm going to talk about it later, but he is a master of his craft. And Ron, Matt, and I have thoroughly enjoyed not only our business relationship, but our personal relationship. And the only thing that we are still a little bit down in the mouth about, and it really has to do with this whole virus thing, is we haven't gotten up on your boat yet.
Hey, I told Matt yesterday, because I was talking to him, I was at the marina, I was talking to him, and he made a comment. I said, if you would stop just going to New Jersey and you'd come to New York, we'll go out on the boat.
There you go. I mean, think about the work we could get done out there.
I don't know about that, but we're gonna have a good time. That I guarantee.
That we can. Well, let me just a little background for our listeners. But in 1995, Ron's been in the business, in the mortgage real estate business for a number of years. But in 1995, a competing mortgage company came to you and said, "Hey, could you help us out with some training?" Which you did, and they should have expected it, but because you put the effort into it. But a grand slam, it went really good. And then in '97, I think in '97, you launched the New York Mortgage Institute, and
Yes.
And that started to go along. You started to work that, and then your name got more known in the industry. And then because of, as we all know, there's a handshake between the real estate and the mortgage industry. We work hand in hand, right?
Right, yep.
And so then you were able to kind of morph into even doing real estate training and doing that. But what I'm excited about is where you're at today, and because that's the history. But where are you at today? And today you're doing strategic coaching with some of the most outstanding mortgage and real estate professional executives. So you're doing that. You're doing. Let me just make sure I don't miss it, because you're doing. Let's see. You're doing real estate programs. You're doing. Gosh, I've got a whole list here.
Matt,
you do the training program. You come in, and this is one thing we're going to talk about is that you do these training and exceptional training programs. And I've sat through several hours of it, in-person training. And then we're going to talk about, with this whole pandemic, how does that look today? But beyond that, you do, executive training, retail origination training, real estate training. And then you're out there doing, when it's allowed, back keynote speaking, that kind of cook a nosedive for some, but at least in person keynote speaking. Yep. But what I wanted to add to that, Ron, is, and I don't know if you would use the word master teacher, but I like the word master teacher, because you're able to communicate, some really complex ideas in a concise and interesting way. So you're able to take complex and as I've said, sitting through that and listening, you just don't bring it down to a knowledge level. You actually make it interesting, and you add some humor to it. And it's just, at the end of the day, it's been a really positive experience where you leave energized and not drained, because of all this knowledge that's gone in. You've actually been able to not only hear it and think about it, but begin applying it. And how am I going to take this back and apply it? So all that to say, we are thrilled to have you on the Ignite podcast today, and begin, this time about just talking with you about not only what you do, but, what the industry is facing right now. And let's start with that. Let's start with the whole idea of this pandemic. And you live in Upper New York, and that's kind of been the epicenter for this whole pandemic. And so, give us your insights on how this is impacting the mortgage industry, maybe the real estate industry as well. But um, uh, how does an originator handle this? How do we respond to this? I mean, how do we have the want to get up and go back to work another day?
Well, I mean, right now, the reality of it is where we are here today is rates are so low, okay? Refinances are in abundance, and purchase activity, despite all of the pandemic, purchase activity is quite robust. Okay, there are inventory shortages, a lot of the problems we've had for years as far as inventory exists. But with rates so low, buying activity is still high, refinance activity is very high. So originators today can be doing extremely well. I mean, many of my clients, my coaching calls with them right now is not even right now how to get more business. It's how to become more efficient, more effective in the business that they're doing. So from a mortgage industry standpoint, the pandemic is created mass opportunity because it's brought interest rates down. The challenges with the economy, lower interest rates, and now things are booming. But the challenge is where is it going? And being here in New York, I live 50 miles north of Manhattan. I actually live about 25 miles from New Rochelle, which was kind of the epicenter where everything started in our area. And because of what happened, it was very real. Okay. And I had this conversation with a lot of people, and, we're talking about masks, and some people watching this are going to say, oh, masks, I don't want to hear about masks or whatever. And that's fine. But, here we have, I'll say 95 to 98% compliance. It's just automatic. You go out, you put it on. And I'm not lecturing anybody on what they need to do, but what's happening now is all over the country, the numbers are going back up. And a lot of people are being very dismissive about what's happening. And you and I were just talking before we kick this thing off. I go, it's going to get very real. Okay. It's going to get very real. And not that I'm giving a lecture on COVID-19. What's going to make it real is that when things start getting bad, then people start to step back. And that's where buying activity could be impacted. That's where even refinance activity could be impacted, because now when people are scared, they respond differently. And that's the unknown in many markets. We went through it here. Okay, the New York market was all but shut down for 3 months. I know in other parts of the country it was all but shut down, but then it opened up much quicker than we did here. Now it's very robust where we are, but in a lot of other places of the country, we're already starting to see a little bit of that contraction. And the contraction is not demand. The contraction is fear. And so that to me is really, what originators, and I always talk about, and you've heard me say this, unfortunately, so many originators only focus on what's 5 inches in front of their face. And don't get me wrong, you can make a ton of money focusing right here, right now. But this doesn't last forever. It doesn't last forever. And I'm always a big believer, maximize what's going on today, but you've got to be working towards the future. And a lot of originators aren't doing that. A lot of originators are only focused on today. And I know time is a challenge, but if you make a lot of money today, but you're not planning for the future, you're sacrificing your income for the future.
Yeah.
And it all balances out. That's why you've got to be doing both. I mean, for me right now, I had to reinvent my business, because this is the longest I've been home without doing a live training event, in-person training event in over 20 years. I've never been home this long. I had a couple things early in the year. I'm not getting on a plane anytime soon.
Yeah.
Nobody's even getting their sales teams together. I'm not going to use his name, but I have a very good friend in the industry, runs a very, very large wholesale company, national wholesale mortgage company. And, I said to him, I go, and he talked about when you might be coming back. And he goes, Ron, he goes, I don't care if we ever come back into an office. He goes, we're rocking it. He goes, our problem is we got 58,000 square feet and 5 years left on our lease.
Right.
He goes, that's our problem. So they've been able to adapt and they have the relationships that are feeding them business, and they will continue to feed them business. But what a lot of originators are doing is they have business today that's feeding them, but they don't have the relationships like realtors and referral partners that are going to feed them in the future. And that's a big challenge.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about, the 5 inches in front of you. And, so when I'm known, for instance, we were sharing earlier, but I was with a mortgage professional on Monday, and that is a client, and they were talking about the fact that uh, there very possibly could be some significant foreclosure activity, bankruptcy activity in the next couple of months, even in, here in Georgia specifically, we were talking about, just
Right.
because of job loss or a reduction, in income or being furloughed or you name it. So that's an unknown that's out there that's beyond that 5 inches. So I guess what you're saying, some of one of the biggest challenge facing originators in is to look beyond that.
It's to look beyond it. It's to prepare for it. Um, it's There's always going to be a purchase market. There's always going to be a refinance market. It depends on whether people are pouring it. There's always going to be markets out there. But what happens is when there is a retraction, when there is a slowdown, when there is a change, a negative change in the market, if you have this many people, I'm just giving an example, this many people who are referring business to you, and the market slows down, well, you're going to have a significant contraction to your income because these people are not going to be able to give you as much business. So I'm always saying we've got to continue to expand how many people are referring you business. So even when the market does contract, and it's a matter of time before it does, I don't know if it's going to be next month, next year, 5 years. I don't know. I've long given up on trying to predict what's going to happen in the market because I always tell people, whatever I predict, do the opposite, you'll make money, because I'm terrible with it. But we know it's going to happen because there are cycles. So if I have this many people sending me business, yeah, the market retracts, but I don't get hit as hard.
Yeah.
Percentage-wise, I still get hit, but income-wise, I don't. And it's just, I love this industry. I've been around it since 1984, even real estate, mortgage, originating, brokering, all the things that everybody's doing, training, coaching. And we are an industry that and when I say we as an industry, I'm not even talking about the mortgage industry, I'm talking about sales. We don't learn from our mistakes.
Right.
We chase the low-hanging fruit. I'm talking about in mass. I'm not saying everybody watching us talking here does it, but in mass, we do that, which is why I'm telling all of my clients, I'm a very big believer in referral partners. I'm a very big believer in realtors. I actually did a webinar about a month, 30 days ago, about how the demand for realtors and the use of realtors is going up, not down. A lot of people are fearful of online. I was able to show them statistics that actually show that the trend of people using realtors has been increasing over the last 5 years, not decreasing. And when I showed people these statistics, they couldn't even believe it. I was getting all sorts of emails. They're like, where did this come from? And it's coming from a report that the National Association of Realtors compiles. But of course, everybody says, well, no, that's jaded because it's the National Association of Realtors. I said, no, it's Experian data. It's not, and NAR puts the report together, but it's the data that comes from Experian, which is a neutral, they just gather data. They did all, they did all the information or gathered all the information. So I'm like, even if it's one call a week or one appointment a week, virtual appointment, everybody, Zoom, it's easy now. Everybody's used to it. One realtor connection appointment per week, you will start stealing away relationships from your competition.
Yeah.
I call it displacing your competition.
Yeah.
They're taking for granted what they have. And you've seen the trainings, and you start off by saying how I make things simple. First of all, I hate when things are complex. It drives me crazy. I like to make things simple, not just for everybody else to use, because I need it simple for me to use. So I just break it down to very simple strategies. And when you can just ask a few questions, you can really steal these relationships away in a very quick period of time. But right now, everybody's so busy that the percentage of people that feel that they have a need is smaller.
Yeah.
And that is one of the, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a trainer and coach. I'm just saying that's one of the challenges that happens, that when the market changes, are you going to be part of the mass that's going to try to adapt? Because if you are, you've got a problem. Or do you want to get ahead of the curve? And so many people, just to give this example, I watched this documentary on, it was called In Search of Greatness. And they interviewed Wayne Gretzky, Jerry Rice, Pele, I believe Serena Williams, a couple of superstars. And we've all heard the quote from Wayne Gretzky. What made you so great? And he goes, "I skated to where the puck was going, not where the puck is." But what a lot of people don't know is what he did when he was younger. He sat in front of a TV, had a clipboard with a hockey rink drawn on it, and he'd watch TV and he'd trace wherever the puck went. He would trace it on the paper. Then what he started doing is he would look at, in between periods or at the end of the game, look at where the concentration of where the puck was most often. And he not only developed the instinct as to where the puck spends most of the time in the rink, he developed the instincts that if the puck was in a certain place, the odds on it going to this place was very high. So a lot of people thought he was just born with this. No, he created this. And the mortgage industry, we know where we are today, but it's really not hard to figure out where we're going. But so many people don't want to pay attention to it. And that to me is a big headwind.
Our guest today, Ron Vaimberg, and if you want to learn more about Ron and his training and his speaking and everything, we certainly encourage you to go to igniteadvisorygroup.com. There you'll learn more about not only Ron, but able to book him, and we'll get more information, Ron, on some of the other websites and the like you said, the webinars that you do. A lot of great things, but I'd like to learn more about a guy. And one way you can learn more about a guy is asking what's on the wall behind you, and because that gives us an insight into Ron. And I think I know where you're going with it. I love that undefeated, but the whole aspect of, you said it's been 20 years since you've been in the office this long without traveling, going out. What really energizes you? Well, today now, you're having to get up every day. You're not going out and doing what you do. What energizes Ron Vaimberg? What gives you the, because, everybody that we have on our listening to this podcast, primarily executives, decision makers, about speakers coming in, trainers, and everybody's, we're all, I'm in my office. We're all working from our home offices, and we may be doing that. I've been doing that for about, 15 years and have loved every minute of it. And, but you got to get up every morning, and you've got to have that energy that says, I'm going to get up. And I would, maybe tying in what's behind you, but what gets Ron motivated every day to do what you love doing? That's really coming alongside real estate and mortgage professionals.
Well, addressing what's behind me, because they're actually not really connected. What's behind me over here, which is in 1972, I'm a Dolphin fan. Okay, and anybody who's watching this, I know there's a whole country now feeling sorry for me because it's a lot of pain. But in 1972, the Miami Dolphins were undefeated. So every player on that team signed this jersey. There was a very limited number of these created. I bought it many, many years ago. And that's why every year I always root for every team to lose a game, because once they do, if anybody else goes undefeated, that loses value. So, you can't see it here, but I've got, Dan Marino helmet, Dan Marino football, some, some signed baseball, some sports memorabilia. I have another thing here. This one was many years ago. I don't remember how many years ago. My son played hockey in the Moscow or Russia national tournament. And when we were there, unbelievable experience watching my son play. He went over with the U.S. team to Moscow. And so we spent a week in Moscow, and he played in their national tournament that's televised throughout, the entire country. They got killed. That's a whole different story. A whole different level of hockey when you go to,
No
when you go to
USA
Moscow.
chant bringing him back at the end.
Yeah, no. They got destroyed. But Vladislav Tretiak, who was the goalie of the Soviet Union team, and arguably the greatest goaltender in the history of the world. At the time, he was and I think he still is, the chairman or president of the Hockey Federation. And so we're there on the finals, and he basically told our coach, or my son's coach, anybody from the US that wants anything signed by me, give it to me and I'll do it. And we all just watched him. He sat at a desk for about an hour and a half, just signing things for the team. So he signed jerseys, he signed pucks, he signed, pictures of him. And, it was something that my certificate of authenticity is I watched him do it. But, it was just amazing. It was just an unbelievable experience. So that's all that's there. As far as what drives me, it's goals. It's goals. I am so clear on what I want to accomplish, when I want to accomplish it by. And as much as, one of the passions for me is doing live trainings, where I'm up on a stage or I'm in a group, whether it's 5 people, whether it's 500 people, it doesn't matter. That interaction, that engagement is what just is my passion. And having to be home, it's not 20 years, it's in my lifetime, I've never been home this long. But from a training perspective, it seems like an eternity. And I know, I can't imagine I'm going any place in the next, 6 months. So I just had to rewrite my goals and recognize, okay, how do I get that same level of fulfillment doing it virtually that I do it live? Mm-hmm. And so it's actually challenged me to make other topics, more topics. It's just, my passion is, how do I bring more value to the marketplace doing it right from my home office? Because I don't have any other choices. But what drives me is, first of all, I'm about helping. I'm about giving. I'm about making a difference in other people's lives. And I'm also about making a difference in my life and my family's life. And my goals are very clear. And I have found that whenever in my life I've ever gotten off track, I realized I disconnected from my goals. And once I reconnect to my goals, it makes it very easy. Most mornings I'm up by 4 a.m.
Yeah.
I'm up by 4 a.m. I'm doing some work, then I'll work out most days. And then I'm back working, and it's just, as long as you're goal driven and you love what you do, you don't work. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges. Doesn't mean I don't have things that go wrong. Doesn't mean I never have a bad day. But I always have that bigger picture in front of me.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about goal setting in a second, but I would say this, Ron, is that for those that are listening in, and I don't know what your coaching load is right now, but there is nothing like having a coach, not only to help you set your goals, but to maybe in the accountability side, but then, as you said, to look ahead and then maybe even more importantly, to readjust when you go through something like this. It's like, well, this is where I was headed, and everything I did was headed in that direction, and now I've got to go this direction, and I'm in no man's land. I'm in between here, and a coach can really come alongside some. I was fortunate enough for almost 8 years to have a business coach when I was working with with Todd Duncan in that organization in the mortgage industry, and that was the first time for myself professionally to have a coach. And I'll tell you, I just would encourage, our listeners to, if they're looking for a coach, to talk to Ron Vaimberg, because it's just so critical. And as you said earlier, things are good right now, but use this time to learn and set goals that are going to take you through, the rest of, hopefully the rest of your career, rest of your life. As Daniel Harkavy in one of his books I was reading was, talked about, sitting on the front porch of your lake home, at age 70, and looking back and saying, you know what, I'm enjoying today because of the choices and the decisions and the goals I set when I was in my 30s, 40s, 50s. It doesn't just happen. So how? Let me ask. So, well, I'll go into the goal setting. How do you view goals for loan officers, and maybe how would you advise them to set them in this current time and current situation?
Before I answer that, can I just make a comment about
Yeah.
what you said? You 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 refer to me as a coach, and everybody refers to me as their coach. But what I do is a little bit different in that I have some people that I'll teach them how they have to do things, not the technology of Zoom, but how you effectively present using Zoom, how you develop relationships using Zoom. I have others that I'll work with in helping them set goals. I have just a call this morning is a gentleman I've been coaching for a few months right now, very successful. He's a reverse mortgage expert, and I'm just working with him on his strategy on how he grows his business. I don't have to teach him how to sell. He knows how to sell. I'm
Mm-hmm.
teaching him how to just grow his business and brainstorming and giving him
Mm.
ideas. I have other people, they just know they have to talk to me, so it makes sure that they do what they're supposed to do during the week. I mean, there are many different things based upon, and you said about my caseload, and you know I do have a limit to how many people I will coach because I don't have coaches that work for me. I do the coaching myself
Yeah.
because it's not one size fits all. Everything is custom. Whether if I'm dealing with the owner of a mortgage company, the conversation is usually very different than a loan officer who's
Mm-hmm.
just trying to get more realtor relationships. So the spectrum varies. So when we use the word coach, it's more of a strategic coaching and guidance based upon what the need is versus, hey, this is what we do with everybody. That works for some people. It doesn't work for me, and that's why I don't have coaches that work underneath me. I do it myself, and I have a regimented caseload. As far as goals for loan officers, to me, it's not even just goals for loan officers, it's goals for anybody. I'll ask somebody what their goal is. I really don't care what they respond with. It doesn't matter. And when I say I don't care, because the next question is what makes the difference. Why is that your goal? And I will tell you 99 times out of 100, when I ask, why is that your goal? I get a whole bunch of mixed messages. And long story short, when I dig into with all the questions that I would ask to find out what's really going on, they're not even really clear on their goal. The goal what they told me is their goal is a wish. It's not something they're even committed to. And right off the bat, that's why so many goal setting workshops, I see, so many that go on in our industry that they're done very poorly because the managers and leaders focus on production. How many originations, how many closings, what's your pull through, and all of those numbers are very important. But the point being is if you don't know what's driving that person to begin with, you have no leverage to inspire them. Okay. A great coach, okay, and I'm a great sports coach, knows how to inspire people and then bring out the best in them. It's not just about blocking and tackling. It's about creating that momentum and that excitement of that bigger picture and making it crystal clear. And most people, when they set their goals, they don't have that. They have numbers. If you are purely driven by money, which is okay, for me, that's not my world. I love making money, but it's not the driving force for everything I do. If you're purely driven by money, then you can put everything else into its place, and then you're always maximizing money. And you will see some people that are purely driven by money, and they make tons and tons of money, and they have great lives. But then there are others that are just focused on serving or making a difference, and then the money comes because we're directly compensated based upon how many people we help.
Mm-hmm.
So when I would originate, I'd say, well, how many people can I help today? How many people's lives can I make a difference? And then the money came. And I still do that same thing here today with coaching, which is I do a very successful business because I found when I only focused on money and I didn't focus on why. If the market was great, the market was great. If the market was bad, I was bad. Now I'm able to keep a stable growing business, even in pandemic times, a stable growing business, because it's not just about money, it's about how am I serving. That's my why. Okay, and of course I have my fun goals and all those things as well, which I know I've shared. I don't. Boating we know is a passion of mine,
Mm-hmm.
but I always tell loan officers, if you don't have a why behind your goal, you don't have a goal. You have a wish.
Yeah.
You have an idea. And most goal setting that's done in our industry doesn't ever ask, why is that your goal?
What?
And it,
Yeah, I was just saying, what are some of those whys?
for me,
Yeah, or for some of the clients you've coached.
in some cases, you know what? I will share a story with a client from many, many, many years ago. Her name was Jackie. And we were doing a coaching call. We were early on in our coaching, and it's a recording I made many, many years ago, but it's still as relevant today. It's called Create My Future. And so we started coaching. So I gave her an assignment because she was struggling with her motivation. So I said, listen to this program, and then on our next coaching call, go over. And so Create My Future was not about goal setting so much. It was about what's going on up in here in the head and then turning it into goals. No exaggeration. We get on the next coaching call. She goes, Ron, I love that program. It was great. I wrote so many things down. And she was a successful originator. And she goes, and I pretty much know I'm not going to do anything that I wrote down. I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. I mean, at least you're honest. Long story short, I started going down all my normal paths of trying to find out what was going on. I wasn't getting anywhere. So I finally just said, I go, let me ask you a question. I go, do you love the mortgage business? She goes, I love the mortgage business. I said, great, let's put it on the side. I go, what's the most important thing to you in your life? The thing you value more and excites you more in your life than anything else? And without missing a beat, she responded. She goes, my relationship with my husband. I said, do you mind sharing me? And she sharing with me. And she goes, he's my best friend and this and that. And because of him, we have our kids who I love. I said, great. I go, currently financially, are you able to do all the things you would love to do with your best friend and the kids you had with your best friend? And she goes, no. I go, so what would be some of those things that you would do? So she was talking about money in the bank and paying for college and doing things with the house and vacations and all sorts of things. You could see she was excited and these things were very real to her. And all I said to her is, I go, do you understand that the mortgage business you love is the vehicle to make all of these things happen? She was silent, and she was silent on the phone for 30 seconds, and that, was forever on the phone. And then she goes, you helped me more in 30 minutes than 6 months of previous coaching. Because I got to her why. I asked her and was able to get to her why. And here's the funny thing, I shared this story, and I guarantee, some of your viewers here, some of our viewers here are going to say, well, that's just so basic. And I always hear that, and I say, okay, start asking you, because we're talking to executives here. I go, start asking your loan officers their why, and you'll find out it's not as basic as you think.
Yeah.
You're going to find that they're going to come up with all sorts of gibberish as far as their answer, and you're going to see that their goals are set to fail before they even leave the meeting with you.
Yeah. I think, Ron, that on the goal setting, it's kind of like I had our home is built on Georgia clay. So we had to have some work done where they came in, and
got it.
went down to bedrock and stabilized. And I think, goal setting and what you're talking about is really, you can either have goals that are either on clay or sand, right? Or what you've done in this particular case, you went down the bedrock. And this is what, hey, I'm going to, now I've got something I can build a goal on. It's not, it's not something surface. It's not, it's the real deal. And I love that about what you said, because, everything else can, becomes very, can get washed away quickly by a pandemic or anything like that. But if you got that core goal of, in this case, my husband, my kids, that was her core goal. And, anything could come your way, even losing her job, and that would still be her core, right? And so I love that. That's a great coaching tip.
The tip really is, and thank you for that. The tip is really, if you ask why enough, there's some people say ask why 7 times. And when somebody gives, an answer, say why, and you go 7 times. By the time you get to the 7th time, you're going to get to the core. Of course, you have to know what questions to ask, okay, whether it's to yourself or whether it's to others. But if you keep asking why and you don't settle for BS answers, you'll be amazing at what you find either in your own mind or other people's minds.
Yeah.
I have all of my toy goals, and I have things and the trips and things that I want to do. And, pretty much everything that's on my goal list, or just about everything on my goal list, I could do right now if I wanted to. And I don't say that arrogantly. I say it humbly, because I don't just do it because they're tied to certain things that I want to accomplish. They're my rewards that I put in place. And that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what drives me. But, as much as I have my list of all my fun things and physical things and all the different things that I want to do and accomplish, it took me years, and I share this with my clients, so I'll share it here. It took me years to get down to really having my goals set down to 3 words. Because when I say these 3 words, I know what it means. It doesn't have to mean anything to anybody else, but it's what it means to me. And the 3 words that when anybody just asks me, so what are your goals? I say 3 words. I go, freedom of choice. And when I say the words freedom of choice, I can go out to dinner. I can go on what trips I want to buy, what trips I want to go on. I can buy the toys if I want, toys. I'm not, very materialistic at this point in my life. I'm very comfortable, very happy. But I know that I have choice, that I have money, and that I love what I do. Those 2 things combined give me choices. The only other thing that is kind of out of my control, so to speak, is if, God forbid, something were to happen with health. Mm-hmm. That, we all deal with that, okay? Mm-hmm. But everything else, pandemic, no pandemic, whatever it is, freedom of choice means that I can make a decision as to what I must do, what I want to do, what I need to do to keep moving forward. And that encapsulates all my goals. And I hear those 3 words to myself.
That's good.
You don't have to light the match, because I already lit the match. And that's
so
what gets me
our
going
guest again today on the Ignite podcast, Ron Vaimberg, and thrilled to have you on with us, Ron. And our listeners can go to igniteadvisorygroup.com and learn more about you and book you. But you have webinars, and you have online training, and so is there a link or some places you could send people, or an email list we could get people on so that they can learn more about you and take advantage of some of the training programs you've developed? And how can we funnel them to you?
Well, because I do everything on a very, very personal level, as you know, okay? I always love when people just send me a direct email. Because they say, add me to your list, whether it's through LinkedIn, Facebook, whether it's through email. They send an email to ron@ronvaimberg.com, or go on any of my social media and just say, I want to remain connected with you. You're automatically, unless you say I like you, but I don't get my list, they're automatically placed into our database of marketing or what have you. And then you'll get access to all the free webinars that I do. If you want to know more about what I do, you can go to lomastery.com. This is, training and coaching, or ronvaimberg.com. Yep. Or if you just got questions, call me.
There you go. So, so the email address is just ron@ronvaimberg.com. That's that simple.
I make it real simple. Ron at
Okay, I'm hoping you
ronvaimberg.com.
get. I'm hoping you get a bunch of emails.
I do.
So let me ask you. You're brilliant, but you're not that good. So
Not that good. No,
no,
I agree.
I'm. What I'm leading up to is, what do you feed yourself on? What kind of books do you read? Where are some of the places you go to learn and grow yourself as not just a trainer, but as a coach, but just as an individual?
Well, at this point, almost every day, at least 30 minutes, I'm either feeding myself something through an audio program, video, or a book. Here are just some books here. You'll see the first book there, which is Anthony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. I must have read that book 5 times. Okay, that is a foundation for me. But there are other books like Think and Grow Rich, Dichotomy of Leadership, Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. The book that I'm actually listening to right now, and I love the audio so much that I needed to go back to it, is a book called Principles by Ray Dalio, who is one of the founders, the founder of Bridgewater Associates, the largest hedge fund in the world. And when Bill Gates and Tony Robbins and a few other top leaders are saying this is a book you got to read or listen to, I'm like, yeah, okay, I got to read or listen to it. And it's been everything that I could ever want and more, so much. In fact, I think it's the only time I ever bought an audio program and a book for the same program.
Yeah.
There's books over on a shelf over here. There's books over here on another shelf. I'm feeding my mind, and it's either sales, marketing, personal growth.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 areas that I focus on. You and I have had our conversations about social media, and you and JC and a few of the guys basically took me into social media kicking and screaming. But needless to say, I've now immersed myself in learning that as well, where I'm now challenging John and whoever to raise the bar versus me just being passive about it. So it's just about feeding my mind. Some of the books are 20, 30, 40 years old.
Yeah.
One of my rereads, and I'm looking at it on the shelf here, it's going to happen next month, is because I also schedule out books that I'm going to read, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's timeless.
Yep.
But it's a must read for me, anybody that's in sales and wants to really elevate their game. There's just so many different people that I follow.
That's
and
great.
I go to seminars. I was actually supposed to go next month to 5-day business mastery program of Tony Robbins, but needless to say, that little thing called the pandemic has
yeah, it's kind of throwing those things off. Hey, on those books back there, are there a couple by Napoleon Hill?
There's 2, Think and Grow Rich and Law of Success.
Law of Success, that's only the 2nd copy I've seen of that book. I had a copy. I mean, literally, Ron, when I read that copy of that book, I was 24 years old, managing a radio station in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I read that book, and it's like every light went on in my head. And so I would just, boy, if I would just encourage our listeners, if you can get a hold of a copy of that book by Napoleon Hill, it's the how behind the Think and Grow Rich. It's just incredible.
It's an unbelievable book. I just looked at the date of it. This book was written in 1979, either written or published in 1979. And this book, actually, when I bought it, this book's probably 20 years old. When I bought it, I bought it from the Napoleon Hill Foundation because there was no Amazon. There was no place to get all this. So you might be able to get a copy of it, but I think the Napoleon Hill Foundation still exists, and you might be able to get a copy of it from there.
Yeah, awesome book. It was exciting to see that book, and I think that's it.
It is.
So Ron, as we wrap up, and I know you're not going out and doing training right now. You're not going out and doing the speaking gigs that you love to do, but you're doing the online training. You're doing the online, workshops, you're doing the strategic coaching. So I can't say, I normally say, when you get on a plane and you leave New York and you've done your deal and you get on the plane, you head back home. What's a win for Ron? But so what's in this current environment, after you've done a webinar, after you've done online training, whether it's Zoom or whatever, at the end of the day, what's a win for you?
The win for me is, and is going to sound so basic. The win for me is after the webinar, when somebody reaches out with a message to me and says, thank you for presenting this webinar, or they sent me a message during the webinar, thank you, this was great, made me think about things I didn't think about, very helpful. It is knowing that I made a difference for at least one person. I mean, I'm hoping it's more, but made a difference for at least one person where they left that with a distinction that they didn't have. Now, I know not everybody's going to write to me or what have you, but I do kind of know, we've all done anybody who's ever done a webinar, you can watch the numbers, and if people stay, you're doing something right. If a whole bunch of people are leaving, you're not doing something right. So for me also, it was a win watching that the numbers really don't change much, if at all, during a webinar. Certainly these days, my numbers staying higher are much better than they were in years past, and that's just because I've been honing my craft. But the biggest win is knowing that I'm making a difference for people. And, ultimately, some people will lead to business. But it's really knowing that people came to me, they were looking for help, they stayed through the whole thing. And if they took an action to do business with me, great. If they're become a member of anything that I'm doing or a coaching client or whatever, that's a huge win. But even if it's just somebody giving me a compliment and saying I made a difference or a change, that's no different than when I do a live event and somebody would come up to me and shake my hand at the end and say, thank you, this was great, I really needed this. No different.
Yeah.
Just now it happens virtual.
Yep. I started out this podcast talking about using the term master teacher. And
Yes.
There's one other term that I would like to wrap this up with. And Matt, my partner in Ignite Advisory Group, and I have talked about this, Ron, and you really summed it up there. And that's the word integrity. You represent as a strategic coach, as a trainer, as a speaker, as a leader in the industry. I just want to acknowledge, your integrity and how much it speaks to us as guys that get to represent you through Ignite and have worked alongside of you on a different projects. And so I just want to say how much we appreciate and respect you, and really highly, 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 as encourage anyone listening to this podcast to take advantage of at least sending an email to ron@ronvaimberg.com and begin the conversation with you.
That would be wonderful. And to me, I have to be, not that I sleep much, because I don't, but I have to be able to put my head on the pillow at night. And I know a lot of people will say that, so it sounds a little bit of a cliche. But to me, I know if I'm doing something right or wrong. And, maybe this is my mom's guilt, and I love my mom and, my dad before he passed, and they instilled, great values in me. Some of those values it took me years to finally bring them out from, years past, a long time ago. But today I just, for pretty much a good portion of my adult career, I don't know how to do it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
And, knock wood, knock whatever. It's serving me. It's serving my family. It's serving everybody that I get to work with. And it brings me to people, and I get a little choked up when I talk about this, but it brings me to people like where you and Matt are in my life too.
Mm.
Well, I'm very fortunate with who I'm surrounded by.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ron. Our guest today, Ron Vaimberg, and it's been a pleasure. We've been looking forward to it. We had to cancel a
Had
couple
this for a
times
while.
because of this pandemic thing, but it's been a pleasure to spend the last 45, 50 minutes with you talking about your business, talking about your impact on the lives of those people that you do life with. As as a strategic coach, you're really getting in there. And so thank you. And I would encourage again our listeners and viewers to go to igniteadvisorygroup.com, learn more about Ignite, but more importantly, learn more about Ron Vaimberg and the difference he can make in your life. Ron, thank you for our time today.
Dennis, thank you for having me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you
Take
much.
care, everybody.